about any of these specific drug-resistant diseases?
Tuberculosis is a specific disease which has been increasingly found to be drug resistant. Then there are strains of Staphylococcus aureus, which is a common bacteria, which have been found especially in hospitals where it can prove to be quite dangerous. Coming back to tuberculosis, tuberculosis is a widely prevalent disease in India. Almost 15 million people in India suffer from tuberculosis, and the fact that it is increasingly getting more and more drug resistant is a burden, both a huge economic burden as well as a burden in terms of mortality, because the drugs which we have to treat tuberculosis, if used correctly, can properly cure it. But if they're used incorrectly, or if they're not used up to the duration they're supposed to be used, the organisms get easily resistant, and once they get resistant, then the treatment options which we have are quite limited. So in that case, it is a very big problem, and more cases are being seen which are drug resistant. Then Staphylococcus aureus, there is a new variety which has come, which is methicillin resistant Staphylococcus aureus, methicillin obviously being a drug. And there's also cases of VRSA, that is vancomycin resistant Staph aureus being seen. And this is a huge problem, as people in hospitals are already prone to infections, and this organism affects them, and this makes them more debilitated. There are two types of drug-resistant TB. One is multiple drug-resistant, which is called MDR TB. One is extensively drug-resistant, which is XDR TB. So there are two primary drugs for treating TB, which are isoniazid and rifampicin. If a person gets resistant to both of these, or if a person's TB gets resistant to both of these, then he's classified as MDR. Whereas in addition to these drugs, if a person gets resistant to other drugs of treatment also, it's called as extensively drug-resistant. And this is also being seen because of improper use of antibiotics by the doctors, which have to be controlled.
Epidemics basically which affect a large land area, like it can be a part of a country or an entire country, it can be a continent or the entire globe. Like pandemics which have occurred recently are influenza pandemic occurred in 2009, and the recent ones are Zika due to Zika virus or Ebola virus, and even HIV/AIDS is a pandemic these days. So the preparedness basically depends on the mode of transmission of the disease. Like for influenza, since it is a respiratory disease, it should be the people who are suffering from influenza should be kept isolated for some time. The doctors and nurses who basically treat such influenza patients should use N95 masks. These are highly protective masks which protect the agent from being transferred from the affected to the a new host, and in this way we can prevent influenza. This has been greatly used these days and has been used even in MBIH. For HIV, the basic preparedness is to have safe sex, that is not to have multiple partners, and also to use condoms, because these prevent the transmission of infected material from one partner to the other.
Rashi, please explain to us about the Ebola outbreak.
Ebola virus disease, it's a fatal disease which has about 90% fatality rate. It is prevalent in Western African countries like Sierra Leone, Guinea and Liberia. As of now in India, there is no case of Ebola. A traveler from Liberia came to New Delhi, and he was diagnosed with Ebola, so he was under a surveillance period, and then he was treated for it. Ebola is a dreaded disease, and it is said to be very fatal because there is no absolute cure for the disease. We still don't have a definitive treatment for the disease, and we can only give supportive treatment. Ebola virus mainly affects the immune system of the body and the vascular system of the body. The patient lands up in circulatory failure, low blood pressure, and the symptoms can be diarrhea, bleeding from the nose, bleeding from other parts of the body.
So Anshul, how far do you think there is freedom of religion in our country?
Broadly, there is usually, if you see from the legal standpoint, there is. But there are still odd cases here and there. Just in the newspaper today, there was a report that a boy had to change his name from Muslim to Hindu just so that he could live in Pune Road to complete his studies. So from that way, there is still a lot of bias, but yeah, broadly, legally, there is freedom of religion. Anybody can practice whatever they want.
So specifically when you pointed out about the conversion that recently occurred in some state, Do you think there is a need for conversion, or do you think that we still have a biased community? Like, where do we think there is a need for conversion?
Earlier, I wasn't pointing about conversion, but a man had to change his name. But yeah, regarding the conversion thing, I don't think a lot of people at this stage have to convert or don't have to convert. Gone are the days where people had to convert to religions like Buddhism just to avoid the caste system in Hinduism, and I don't think people have to convert as such. I mean, if they do it, it's purely from a faith point of view, not for any economic or social gain.
So you believe conversions these days are not forced; they are voluntary.
I cannot speak on every single case, but mostly I don't think they are. They are voluntary.
Okay. So do you have any specific points to ponder about the anti-conversion bill that is being passed in the 5 states of India?
Well, I don't know. It's being made a huge issue when there are so many bigger issues we have to worry about. The people are not even getting water to drink. I mean, their lives are not more important than their religions or their faiths, whatever one says. So people will attain moksha if they have water to drink in the first place. So I don't think it's a huge issue. Regarding the law being passed, I guess it's fair from people's point of view. If people are worried about themselves being converted, or things like love jihad.
नमस्ते, आपकी राय में हमारी देश के लोगों के पास किस हद तक धार्मिक स्वतंत्रता है?
100%। कोई भी व्यक्ति किसी भी धर्म को अपनाने के लिए, अपना धर्म निभाने के लिए स्वतंत्र है। इस पे किसी की कोई रोक टोक नहीं है।
अगर यही आपकी राय है तो फिर देश में इतने धर्म परिवर्तन के किस्से क्यों सामने आते हैं?
धर्म परिवर्तन के किस्से आर्थिक कारणों से होते हैं। जो पिछड़ी जाति के कुछ लोग रहते हैं जिनको आर्थिक रूप से दबाया जाता है, सामाजिक रूप से दबाया जाता है, वो फिर या तो हिंदू धर्म या ईसाई धर्म, सब कोई भी धर्म अपना करके और अपनी स्वतंत्रता कायम रखना चाहते हैं, इसलिए ये तकलीफ आती है।
जी सर, क्या आपको लगता है कि हमारा देश आज भी हिंदुत्व की तरफ पक्षकार है? पक्षपात है?
नहीं, पक्षपात सोचना आपका शब्द गलत है, क्योंकि हिंदुस्तान हिंदुओं की धर्म संस्कृति है, इसलिए हिंदुत्व की ओर झुकाव तो रहेगा ही हर आदमी का जो हिंदुस्तान में रहता है, किंतु दूसरे किसी धर्म का अनादर नहीं करे। पुराने जन्म से भी सब धर्म अलग अलग मानने वाले हिंदुस्तान में रहे हैं और उनको अपने अपने धर्म की मानने की आज़ादी रही है, किसी पे कोई दबाव नहीं रहा है। और अब ये कोई जातिवाद पे किसी कारण से धर्म पे दबाव डालते हैं तो राजनीतिक कारण हो सकते हैं, आर्थिक कारण हो सकते हैं, बाकी ऐसा कोई लगता नहीं है कि किसी का दबाव है। धन्यवाद।
सर, क्या आपको लगता है कि आज जो लोग अपना धर्म परिवर्तन करते हैं उनके ऊपर किसी प्रकार का आर्थिक या राजनीतिक दबाव होता है, या फिर वो स्वैच्छिक होता है?
स्वेच्छा से तो बहुत कम लोग धर्म परिवर्तन करते हैं। वो समझदारी से पढ़े लिखे, यदि वो धर्म परिवर्तन करता है तो उसको उस धर्म में कोई अच्छी रुचि होती है, इसलिए करता है। बाकी यदि पैसे के कारण से, दबाव के कारण से ये जो धर्म परिवर्तन हो रहे हैं, जो सुनने में आता है, ये गलत है।
Yes, we endorse Indore MUN.